I'm flying like the WASP because I'm great. Look at me, I'm amazing. Okay, review time. So, Ant-Man and the Wasp is here. It's the latest movie in the Marvel Studios realm of movies. Words. And you know what? It is actually a very good, fun summer film. It's like it's wholly contained, so it's really just about, that world that they're in. It's not like life altering or anything of the sort. It's not one of those earth-shattering kind of movies where the whole world needs saving. What happens in this film is it's a personal world that needs saving, and so we get to explore that. Ant-Man and the Wasp takes place before Infinity War. It takes place before Infinity War, but after Civil War. So when we open up on the film, we'd see the consequences of what took place in Civil War. And to be honest with you, I think that's the theme of Ant-Man and the Wasp. Actually, to be honest, there's really two themes floating around there. There's the idea of family, and then there's the idea of consequences. For example, Scott Lang was in Civil War. He was, if you remember, on Team Captain America. He was of that group that did not sign the Sokovia Accord. Now, if you saw Infinity War, and even if you didn't see Infinity War, there's a line in there where Natasha is saying that Scott and Clint took a deal that allowed them to return to their families, but, there was things involved. So we don't know what the deal was that Clint took, but if it was based on what happened with Scott, we can tell that he was probably under house arrest for 2 years, because Scott was under house arrest for 2 years. But the main story also deals with the consequences of Janet Van Dyne. Now, Janet was the original Wasp, and if you remember in Ant-Man 1, Hank tells his daughter Hope that her mother was trapped in the quantum realm. But when Scott was able to come out of the quantum realm in the first Ant-Man film, it sort of gave him the idea that maybe he could continue working and try and figure out a way to pull her out. So for the great part of the film, there's the whole idea of trying to get Janet out of the quantum realm. From a visual standpoint, the quantum realm is beautiful. It looked good. It felt rich. If I had to say, though, my only problem with it is because I've seen rich worlds from Marvel. It's like Doctor Strange 1.2 or 2.0. So in essence, in this film, the quantum realm, though beautiful visually as it is, it doesn't add anything to the Marvel ethos. Or does it? And I'm not going to go into details because, again, spoiler-free-ish. But there is a conversation that Janet has with Hank at the end, or coming down towards the end, where it sets up in my mind the idea that maybe the quantum realm might be the MCU's version of either A, the negative zone, or it could be the portal to bringing mutants to the MCU. If this Fox deal goes right, they would have technically set it up in a way that the quantum realm is the energy force that could bring about mutants. The CGI, in terms of like the de-aging effects, it was pretty good. I liked it. There's a thing that we call the uncanny valley. A beautiful example for that might have been Governor Tarkin in Rogue One. With this film, the de-aging process for both Hank, Michael Douglas, Janet, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Lawrence Fishburne, Goliath, you know, it looked good. Although I will say Lawrence Fishburne kind of sort of looked like Ike. I agree with the person who said that. He kind of did look a little bit like Ike Turner. Speaking of weird male characters, I have to say, every time I sit down and I watch like Ant-Man, or in this case Ant-Man and the Wasp, I feel a lot more comfortable with the idea of Scott Lang being the one that they went with. Because if you know the story of Hank Pym, first of all, he created Ultron. It wasn't Tony and Bruce, the Science Bros. But he has anger issues. And his anger issues sometimes tends to get directed at Janet Van Dyne, his wife. So yes, Hank is a bit of a wife beater. It's one of those things that makes me very uncomfortable when I think of Dr. Hank Pym. However, in the film here, they bring it to sort of like the edge of his narcissism or the edge of like his anger issues, but there's always a point or a person, or in this case persons, who help pull him back, and it would be Janet, and it's also his daughter Hope. The cast was well knit. I liked how the cast play off each other, especially Evangeline Lilly and Paul Rudd. Evangeline Lilly and Paul Rudd has a really good chemistry on screen. When you see Scott and his daughter, because there's some really good father-daughter heartstring feeling moments there, that is brilliant. That has good chemistry. Like I said at the beginning of this review, it is really about family. So there's a dynamic between Scott and Cassie, and if you aren't familiar with the comics, Cassie herself grows up to become a superhero. And there's also a dynamic with Hank and Hope, obviously because they're trying to get out the mother, but at the same point in time, it feels good.
This is an advanced prototype that your mother and I worked on together. She never got to use it. But now I realize that we were working on it for you.
It's about damn time.
This could have, for my money, could have been the Wasp show, and I would have been fine. Seeing the Wasp in action, that was so cool. It was.
You gave her wings?
And blasters.
So I take it you didn't have that tech available for me?
No, I did.
Evangeline Lilly owns that screen. The fight and action sequences are really well coordinated. And again, Ant-Man and the Wasp, they play off well, opposite each other. In terms of like Hope and Scott's relationship, at the beginning of the film, she's not thrilled with him, because she's also, a fugitive of the FBI. But by the time the film comes to a close, they've sort of mended their bridges, and it's good to see. So yeah, Marvel's disposable villain problem returns. It's kind of annoying. It's the Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming, Killmonger, or even Thanos. I expect the villains to be a little bit more than just pieces that are there, I guess, to propel the hero story along. The villain is a bit disposable. And I say villain because there are two villains touted in the film. One is Ghost, but she's not really a villain in a real sense. You can understand her motivations. That being said, her backstory is really cool. Her front story could have been expanded a little bit more, because especially when you find out where she fits in terms of the MCU, in terms of what's happening at S.H.I.E.L.D., in terms of what's happening in Marvel on the whole, it kind of makes you wonder, well, they could have expanded a little bit more on it. The other villain is a mobster type guy who's played by Walter Goggins. I don't know, I feel like this may not necessarily be the year for Walter Goggins. I've seen him in Tomb Raider and I was like, eesh. And then I saw him in Ant-Man and the Wasp and it's like, eesh. I feel like if you took him out of the equation, you could still get the same bad guy role from anybody. And that's another thing that I have in terms of an issue with Ant-Man and the Wasp. If you're going to hire people like Lawrence Fishburne and Michelle Pfeiffer, use people like Lawrence Fishburne and Michelle Pfeiffer. Okay, like there's a sequence that happens that is attributed to Janet, but it's not Janet that you see. And it's really funny, but at the same point in time, you have her. There are ways, and I can't talk about it because it's a spoiler-free-ish review, but there are ways that you could have dealt with that scenario better. All right, let's talk about Michael Pena just for a little bit. Michael Pena's Louise, he is still the man with all the epic storytelling, and it doesn't disappoint. Like early on in the MCU, they used to do these Marvel one-shots where you would get like stories from like Agent Coulson, or a funny thing happened on our way to Thor's hammer, that kind of stuff. I would genuinely love to see a Louise one-shot film. Make it happen, Marvel. Ant-Man and the Wasp continues with that kind of heist film, crime caper kind of vibe. This is the film that reminds me a great deal more of Italian Job. Like even in the music, there's certain strands in the music that sort of reminds me of Italian Job a great deal. Overall, Ant-Man and the Wasp is a really good film. It is a really good summer film. And like I said, it's wholly contained. So, you know, the events that happen elsewhere you don't really have to worry about that during the film. Boy, I had to sit down and think about, does the post-credits scene eclipse the movie that I just saw? It was that good. It is something that I have been saying for months. I keep telling my friends we're going to go into that movie and it's going to be a fun ride and everybody's going to love it. And then X is going to happen or Y is going to happen. Stuff happened. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say about it. Fun ride, good music, you know me and soundtracks. It's a visually beautiful experience in IMAX. Next for me is going to be Mission Impossible, you know, for reasons. So that's it for me. Remember to like and subscribe this video and share it with your friends because, you know, that helps. Enjoy. Bye.